Ferment Podcast, conversations about worship and transformation. I'm your guest host, Mike O'Brien. Today, we're diving into Advent, Christmas, and a new song called Royal Son, written by Florida native Anthony Peebles. Anthony joins us today, along with my wonderful wife, Susan O'Brien, who created the YouVersion devotional that accompanies the song. I had the joy of producing Royal Son, and I can't wait to share this conversation with our Ferment community. Welcome, Anthony and Susan. It's so great to have you guys.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
So, Anthony Peebles, you are part of our Vineyard community. You've been part of our Vineyard community for a while, and you are in the Panhandle of Florida. Is this correct?
Yeah, the Panhandy.
The Panhandy.
Yeah, that's affectionately named.
So this is Panama City Beach. Is that home for you?
Yeah, Panama City proper. We like to distinguish ourselves.
Panama City proper. So there's the beach and then there's the city.
Yeah, the city's like where, you know, the tourists don't usually show up in the city. But in Panama City Beach, I think we get a large influx of tourists. But so we stay in town. That way we don't run into everybody.
Amazing. And Anthony, you and we first met, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. I'm in Atlanta, a worship leader at a Vineyard church in Atlanta. And you were at the time at the Panama City Vineyard. Was it called the Panama City Vineyard?
Well, yeah, that's probably why you thought I was on the beach, because it was on the beach. Yeah, the Panama City Beach Vineyard, yeah.
Back in the day. And I think you drove to Atlanta and we went up to a retreat at Ridgecrest, of all places, together.
I think my mom drove me up there, actually. Yeah.
Wow.
And I think at that time, I want to say 16, because I was dating my wife, Krista.
Yeah.
And I got in a car with a strange dude with a Fu Manchu who honked and waved at strangers. It was a game changer.
And was that the conference that Jeremy Riddle was at? Do you remember him being there?
Dude, I actually have no recollection. The only thing I remember really was, honestly, the more I remember was the breakouts. I remember worship happening, but I don't remember who did it or anything like that.
Yeah, it was like a boot camp for youngsters, and I think Jeremy was there, and Randy McCoy and Joel Bale, and just a few folks. It was a good time. So we've kind of been in connection over the years. The Panama City Beach Vineyard closed up several years back. Mm-hmm. Tell us kind of what you've been up to, and at the same time, give us a little background about you and your family, and then we'll give a cool update that will bring us to today. But kind of tell us who you are and what you've been doing.
Yeah, sure. So I was raised here in Panama City. We went to the Beach Vineyard. We started going when I was like 10. I went there for about a decade, made some really close friends who are still my besties. And then, they closed about 10 years ago-ish, I think, off and on. And when Chris and I first got married, we were like, we had an opportunity to help with a church plant. It wasn't in the vineyard, and it was just here in town. And so we were like, cool, let's help with the church plant. And then through time, after we that church kind of got established, I ran into a record deal. And so I went out and passed off my role as the worship leader there to a friend, and went out and cut a record, did some touring, and then I play locally here. So I play regionally. One time I got flown out to play at the Hard Rock in Vegas for a
Nice.
for a Bose showcase.
Okay.
And
tiny speakers.
Yeah. They used, this was for their newer, the F series, I think they're the two squares that sit on top of each other. Anyway,
nice.
And then at that time, Krista was pregnant with our first child, and Jasper was born, and we kind of started shifting our direction a little bit. And when Jasper was 6 months old, huge storm come through Panama City. It was Hurricane Michael, it was a Cat 5. We lost our house, and we had to move around to a bunch of different places here in Panama City because so much was messed up for the storm. There was no place to live.
Wow.
So we had to bounce around for months with our 6-month-old baby, and we rebuilt and all that. So anyway, that's sort of the adult history.
Sure.
The interesting childhood history is that, like, I'm adopted. I'm one of 5. I don't know.
Wow.
It's not that interesting.
Well, yeah. I mean, you're that's very cool. I mean, what did you do after were you doing worship and stuff through those years while you were signed and stuff like that?
Yeah, I was. I had to kind of, for a little bit, I was doing the mercenary thing, as there was no place that really was like, a friend calls, he's like, hey man, my worship leader's in Orlando with his family's going through stuff. Can you pinch hit for like 6 months? And then, and another friend after that was like, hey, I'm planting a church. Can you train my worship team? But then, I didn't really want to do the staff thing. And then after that, again, around the time Jasper was born, we joined the church that we'd been at for the last, I don't know, 7 or 8 years, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is that like a sizable mega modern church kind of thing? What's the vibes?
No, I've never really done the bigger church thing. That church was, I think, maybe 180, something like that. Okay. 180 people.
Cool.
Yeah.
So you've let the vineyard closed in 14 or 15. You've just been kind of exiled and serving the church at large in the Panhandle there for 10 years. In addition to doing like playing the bar, I mean, your job has been playing music out, right? I mean, you've been doing that.
Yeah, that's been kind of the primary thing, income, so a lot of the songwriting too, like because of the publishing and record deal, I found myself, Nashville's not too far away from us, so I found myself up there doing the like songwriting retreats and stuff like that, and had some songs placed on TV and through that, which was nice. So yeah, but that's I mean, it's been leading worship. There was a kind of a small worship movement that happened here, where we started writing originals and singing some stuff we'd written, and I was always so intimidated by writing worship, but it was a nice introduction into that. So yeah, I always, the worship and the playing out thing always kind of, I always felt like I kind of sat on the fence on that, not just kind of watching which one would grow and which one I felt like was moving and had life on it, and but it's never really. So far, it's not been like, oh, we're just going to just jump totally onto one side of the fence until recently.
So before we give a really cool update about your life and a connection to the vineyard, can you just say something about the Panhandle, Christianity in the Panhandle, faith in the Florida Panhandle? It's the South, but it's also Florida. What is that? Most of us have just been to the beach, and we don't really think about church while we're at the beach. So
totally,
what is happening there? What does it mean to be a Christian there?
That's I'm gonna make sure I answer this as carefully as I can, because I love my Florida Panhandle people. There's weird dynamics here, because it's North Florida enough to be in southern Alabama and southern Georgia.
Sure.
And so it's got the southern vibe for sure. But then it's also transient and touristy enough to where the community, I think, has a hard time settling into its own identity, because it's been built around people who come for a season and leave and kind of consume and then go. And so I do think, like, just recently, I would say in the last, honestly, post Michael, the hurricane, is probably when Panama City is starting to find its own sort of footing and voice in a lot of ways, because it's just lived on being a tourist town. And if you've never lived in a tourist town, I guess it's kind of hard to conceptualize, but it's all built on people coming in, consuming, and then taking off. And it's so the culture struggles a lot of ways in the arts, I think, and in more spiritual spheres, because it's not necessarily focused on creating and cultivating something of its own, but kind of serving this sort of cycle of people.
That's
and I
cool.
think that sometimes can bleed into the church, and definitely bleeds into the arts and other areas. So
that's so good. And you've contributed in a really significant way there, which makes it a little bittersweet to say, I hear that you're starting a new job and has some great connections and divine appointments, even with this song, with who sung the song on for Vineyard Worship. Tell us a little bit about your new job and what's going on.
Yeah. So Krista and I are going to be coming on with Canyon View Vineyard in Colorado, in Grand Junction, Colorado.
Wow.
Yeah.
Panama City to, wait a second, the panhandle of Florida to western Colorado. That's a big
yeah.
Does that happen a lot? Is that connection happen? That's quite the move.
It's a big move. It's 26 hours if you're curious to drive it, which we will be doing. Yeah, it's just one of those things. Like Krista, my wife Krista, started working with the national team in the end of 2022, and which kind of plugged us back into the vineyard. And we'd been sort of eyeballing stuff, feeling things out for about a year and a half now, or around a year and a half. And and so in 24, I felt like the Lord was like leading us to resign from the church we were serving at.
Yeah.
And so I didn't really have anything loaded in the barrel. And the next day on Monday, you sent me a text and were like, hey dude, how do you feel about Colorado? And my initial thought was, I don't really want to go that far. So I was about to just write it off because it's so far away.
Yeah, because I've always known, like you and I have stayed in contact these 10 years since you haven't been in a vineyard in over 10 years. You've just been kind of working and serving churches in the Panhandle, right? But you and I have been in contact a little bit here and there. And I knew Krista was working with the national team. So when Corey told me about the job that was opening up and Tim leaving and going to Phoenix, which is beautiful and good, the Lord was all in that. He's just like, who do you know that's out there? And oftentimes I am a bit of a headhunter passively for churches in the worship world. And I'm like, man, Anthony is a great worship leader. And we just been working on this song and I'm like, what is it? Can't be that easy. so yeah, I texted you. I'm like, bro, like, do you want to move? 26 hours away. So that's crazy, dude. Yeah. So I sent you that, and then what happened? You guys were like,
I got on a call with Corey that Tuesday because I told you I want to sleep on it because I'd resigned on Monday. So I was still like, okay. And then, man, every subsequent interaction, conversation, hearing about what their heart is and what they care about and what kind of place it is and the people, it's like all the boxes were just checked. Every box, not even all the really hyper spiritual ones, the logistics. And it all makes so much sense for us.
And the fact that you resigned your previous position out of a sense of God telling you without knowing that this was going to happen, that is crazy.
It is, man.
That's so awesome.
Yeah. I honestly think like when we lost the house during the hurricane, like God, is like free places to stay came up. Money came out of nowhere, like just provision on provision on provision. And it's like, it's so clear from that like, God's not going to, he's not going to let us fall, Well, we might fall.
That's cool.
He's,
sure. Yeah.
Like I trust the Lord, it's like, it sound crazy. It sounds nuts. And I think it's nuts too, but I'm just trying to do what I think he's wanting me to do.
Well, that's so cool. We're so stoked that God is moving you and directing you and that we're going to have a great worship leader at Canyon View, and just the connection with Tim and everything, just a really beautiful thing. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, the Advent this pod will hit mid-November, so we're excited to be thinking about Advent and Christmas, and we know a lot of worship leaders are already thinking about it, right? Some of us have been planning songs for months and months and getting things together, and some of us have yet to do it, and that's okay. And I just wanted, Susan, you've worked on the devotional for Anthony's song, Royal Sun, we want to talk a little bit about Advent and this crescendo that goes into Christmas. And the song certainly can be framed as an Advent song, a Christmas song, and really any time of the year song. Can we just talk a little bit, Susan, about Advent and why it's important for the church, for the vineyard, for the modern church that maybe hasn't thought of Advent or this time ever for some of us out there?
Yes, I think Advent is a season where you can really enter into the longings. So you're entering into the story of God and how when Jesus was born, there was longing in the community for a Savior to come and rescue them from the oppressor, the Roman oppressor. And entering into that longing, there's technically, if I remember correctly, like 4 Sundays of Advent that you just really enter into the longing, and we all carry longings. And so it's a space where you can sing songs of joy, but also of the world isn't exactly what I want it to be yet. Like I have unmet longings that I know the Lord will answer, but he hasn't answered yet. And so there's just this beautiful space where we can enter into with creation, the longing of creation, with other Christians, with the world that's moaning, groaning, and wanting a Savior that will come and make all things new, as the song says, make all things right, to make all things as they should be. So it's this beautiful opening of a space to enter into that longing.
That's beautiful. And the story of Advent, like the guardrails of the Christian calendar tell us, hey, a few weeks before Christmas, we celebrate the birth of Christ. There's a crescendo, there's an expectation. The guardrails before Easter, hey, there's a season of Lent, of mourning, of walking, journeying to the cross with Jesus, right? And then celebration of Easter, of rejoicing the risen King, right? Many churches through the summer, through ordinary time, will have, seasons of rest or books, studies in the Psalm and things like that. So these guardrails are there to help us, not to hinder us. And more than any other time in the Christian year, I feel like Advent is the most vineyard of the time. It's the now and the not yet, right? We know the end of the story, but we're going to tell it again. Hey, there's this Savior that came to rescue his people. And here's the longing of his people. Do you have a longing, right? So it's this thing that is embedded in us as a vineyard people, as a kingdom people. And Anthony, the song, you wrote this song, Royal Sun, and I had the pleasure of musically producing it and working with you, which is such a joy. It's such a great song. So I had kind of made a call out to some songwriters, just said, hey guys, we're looking for some songs. And you sent me this song, Royal Sun. Can you tell me, what was the roots of the song for you? Sometimes there's a magical story and sometimes there's not. I'm just curious, what was it for you? Where did this song come from?
Yeah. So there was a time when a lot of the frameworks I had for faith started failing me. And during that season, part of what helped to bolster me was reading a lot of the fathers, and one specific favorite of mine is Athanasius, and he writes a book called On the Incarnation. And so, yeah, I think getting an opportunity to write a song that's focused in on the Incarnation, that means a lot to me, because once my field of view gotten a little wider towards what it meant that God's becoming flesh and dwelling among us, that changed a lot for me personally. And so getting the opportunity to write a song around that is, it's a great joy.
That's so cool. So did it just come out of your body? Did you just write it, or did you fight for it? Did
No,
have to
you know
fight for
what?
this
A
song?
lot of that content is preloaded because a lot of times that's my reading. That's like the type of stuff I like to read, or like Maximus the Confessor talks about the uncreated light of God, and how the beholding of the uncreated light is what transforms us.
Wow.
And so things like that, I like to see if I can spin them into a new song, something that's from, the 600s.
Is Maximus the Confessor, is that a metal band?
It
And
should
why
be, dude.
couldn't it be?
I think it might, check Spotify because it might be.
That's awesome. So that you read some of that stuff, it was in your bones, so it's just kind of flowing out. Because when I heard the song, there's so many turns of phrases that are just brilliant and wonderful and really helpful in kind of awakening me to the season and to the moment. And that's what I'm looking for in really any worship song, but in an Advent song, something that kind of shakes me and wakes me up. And that did it. And the phrase "Royal Son" at the end of the first verse, I heard that and I immediately went to the internet. I'm like, Royal Son has to be the name of a band. It has to be the name of a record. And it really isn't anywhere. I couldn't find it anywhere. I'm like, dude, that is such a great phrase, a great thought, the Royal Son, of worship,
Oh yeah, dude. That's surprising that that's nowhere to be found.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I missed it, but I didn't see anything. So
Let's just say you didn't. Let's say that.
I love it. So as producer, you sent me the song. I said, bro, I love this song. I had very few notes on it. I think we did some arrangement things. And because I'm always thinking, how can I help arrange this for worship teams and worship bands? Because I work with a lot of different worship bands. So I'm like, man, I'd love for this song to sing and work well as a recording for a worship team and for a congregation. So made a couple of those changes, and there just wasn't a whole lot else to do other than make the decision of how to record it. So
yeah,
well done.
Thanks, dude. Well, you have some credit there too, my guy. So you
a couple words. I wrote a couple words for the song.
You spotted a few uglies and you were like, hey, what can we do better? Which I love, man. I think it's great. And I have a tendency to over-chord. So you're like, trim that back, baby. It was beautiful.
Yeah, so it was really fun. I love the song. What's funny is the church you're going to was under worship pastor Tim Brown. Tim Brown has moved to Phoenix to serve there, which is brilliant and wonderful. So you're kind of taking Tim's job, and Tim sang the song for Vineyard Worship, which is hilarious. Tim Brown and Hannah Despain kind of do a duet on the song. It's really beautiful, really good. Jacob Arnold played drums on it. He's kind of like a Nashville drummer dude. And my good friend Matthew Montgomery, he played guitars, and it's just so cool seeing the final version take shape. And we want everybody to listen to a little bit of it now. We're just going to play a portion of Royal Son featuring Tim Brown and Hannah Despain.
Let every heart awaken, behold the royal Son. Jesus, the God who took on flesh, uncreated light in our darkness. God with us, God with us. We make room for you. We long for you to come. Come, Lord Jesus.
Awesome. That was Royal Son. And we're here with the author, with the writer of Royal Son, Anthony Peebles. Anthony, what emotions or thoughts come up as kind of the writer of the song when you hear the version that's completed?
Oh, dude. It's so good, man. I remember being in, my pastor's name was Joe Cummings. Shout out to Joe. I remember being in Joe's living room, probably, I don't even know. I was 20 or 21, and I was attempting to write some worship. And I was like, dude, you know what I would love? What would mean a lot to me is if I was able to write worship that could be used in vineyards. And so it's something that's been in my heart for a long time. And so it honestly, it's really special to me. Like, it's really special that I feel like it's a gift from the Lord, that I'm able to just have a song that people are going to sing in church and worship with. It's a blessing. So,
because most of the songs you've written, like when you say you were with the label and you did, I mean, those were not worship songs. Is that correct?
No. But the Lord, it was like 4 or 5 years ago, I was in prayer, and I was like, you got to give me something to do, man. I don't know what I'm doing. That's how I pray. Sorry. And
that's awesome.
And I felt like the Lord was like, you need to start writing worship. Start filling up your repertoire of original tunes. 'Cause I want to do things with your worship that you're writing. So I didn't really get cool. that, because I didn't see any field of view for that. I didn't see any prospect for that, or any reality for what that could be. And so now I'm like, oh, maybe the Lord wants to do something with my worship.
It's so good. Susan, as my wife, as I produce a song, oftentimes you'll hear the song 87 times, 187 times over and over again. I know that you like a song when I hear you singing it. When you don't sing the song that I'm working on, I get very worried. And you were singing the song immediately, which was great. And you wrote the devotional for it. What did you think about the song when you first heard it? And how did it inspire your Devo writing?
Well, it is a beautiful song, and it's very singable. And my son and I, our 13-year-old son, we would go around the house singing parts of it as well. So it's very exciting. I was so honored when Melissa asked me if I'd be willing to write a devotional for it. And it almost wrote itself. Like, the hardest part was trying to narrow down the scriptures to find that supported each section. So it's full of imagery, the song is, and beauty and truth. And it was very fun to write the devotional.
That's awesome. Can you tell us about the Devo? It's going to be on YouVersion, so like the YouVersion app, so you can go through it there. Tell us a little bit about the structure of it, and if it's like a personal Devo, or could we use it with our worship team? What's up with it?
Sure. So there's 5 days, and each day takes a section of the song, 4 lines of the song. So verse 1, verse 2, chorus, bridge. And there's some scripture. So before you start, I found one thing that has been so helpful to me. When I come to God in my devotional time, just to take some deep breaths, to be still, and then to notice how I'm coming. Like, do I feel rushed? Do I feel angsty? Am I joyful? How am I coming to this time with the Lord? So that's how it starts, just a space where you can be still, get comfortable, breathe, and ask yourself, how am I coming? And along with that, to name our desires before the Lord. So, for example, God, I'm coming just worried about this one thing. I really want peace. That is my desire. From there are some scriptures written out, prophecies in the Old Testament, or perhaps part of the Christmas story. And then after that is a space just to consider a small devotional thought. And then there's 3 questions to ponder. So there's a space you could journal that if you're doing it alone, or if you are doing it with a worship band, you could just lay out those questions and let there be space for people to answer if there's time out loud. And then to end the day of the devotional is a space of practical steps to activate. 1 or 2 of the steps have to do with Christmas, doing something during the Christmas season, just that you can take that song, you can take those scriptures, you can connect it with where you are in your life, and there's a way to walk it out, to kind of get it more into your body and into your ordinary life, that it's not just words that you're singing, but it actually becomes a part of you.
That's cool. Anthony, when you saw the Devo stuff, were you like, oh, wow, Susan, that's a lot. I didn't mean to make it that complicated.
No,
It's just a song,
not at all.
dude.
I thought it was wonderful, Susan. You crushed it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
What's the Sue? What's the journaling thing? Why is that important for us? How could you sales pitch us on journaling and the importance of that? Because that's kind of the reflective part of the Devo.
Yes. First of all, I want to say, if you don't like to write, you can answer these questions on a voice memo or with somebody. You can speak out loud. So don't think, oh, I'm not a journaler, I'm not going to do this. But for me, as someone who is a quiet introvert that tends to go with the flow and notices how other people are doing more than how I'm doing, journaling has been a space for a really long time in my life, decades, even since my youth, where I've just been able to tap into, how am I feeling? Like, what is going on in here? And really explore with the Lord a lot of times of Lord, this is what I want, and this is happening, and I don't understand. Or I'm so thankful, God. I want to record these things that you've done that I'm going to forget. So it's a space for me that I really met with the Lord in that. And there's freedom where you can answer one question or not. You can answer all three, or you could come back to it. So it's not necessarily a check-off list. It's just some ideas. Like one of the questions is, what do you currently notice about the limits of your human flesh? You could think about that throughout your day of, I'm tired and I don't want to be tired, or I want to do more things and I'm not able to, or I have to be at all these places at once. So it can also be something that a question you ponder throughout the day, and you could always journal at the end of your day as you reflect back.
That's so good. Yeah, I think for me as a worship pastor, part of my job, when I was younger, part of my job was to make my pastor and my church happy and be as festive and more festive than any of them, and to make the church awesome and God awesome and joy to the world and go, go, go. That was my job. Whereas now, I sense like my job is to help bring peace and relieve the anxiety of the congregation that I'm leading and the team that I'm leading with, because everyone's going crazy, right? So instead of adding to that, I want to use tools like this devotional. I want to use tools like this song. Like when I heard the song, I thought, this is the song I want to sing this Christmas season. In Advent season, this song directs me to Jesus. This song, it's not necessarily a slow song. It's kind of a medium tempo song, but it doesn't add anxiety to the celebration. It kind of instructs us to slow down and to wait. And that's part of our job as worship pastors, is to say, hey, everybody, we know everybody's going, but let's stop and pause. For those of us who are hurting and longing, let's wait together for the Lord. Let's wait together for his kingdom. Let's look to a new day together, right? Every day isn't a celebration, a party. You know, there are some days that are funerals. So let's wait and pause together. So that's part of what I love about the Devo stuff for myself, but also for teams, just to stop everybody and say, hey guys, here's some thoughts and questions to process. So we're going to wrap up here, but I just want to say, Anthony, we're so thankful for you. I am so stoked that you are joining the team at Canyon View what a beautiful story of kind of being hiding out in the Panhandle, and then this beautiful church, this connection happening. We're so excited to have you there and see what God's going to do there.
Yeah.
And your wife's already been a part of the organization of Vineyard USA, but have you a part of a church, and knowing that there's more songs like this. And I think you've been doing some writing with some other folks from the Vineyard recently.
Yeah, Tim and I just wrote last week. We just did a song. And, it's funny. When you do enough co-writes, you bump into co-writes with people and you're like, oh, this is going to be a drudge. But Tim was not like that. Tim, it was real easy and natural. So I think we'll probably get more stuff on the books. And then I'm working on one with Joshua Miller right now too. And Andy Squires and I just finished
That's
a hymn.
great.
Yeah. So,
wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah. So, and you know him, he all he wants to do is talk about depressing stuff. So I had to pull him out of the trenches. Or
Pedal
maybe
steels and cellos.
Maybe he pulled me into the trenches. I can't tell, honestly.
Yeah, you got to be careful. You got to be careful with Andy. He'll pull you. That's so good. Well, that's exciting to see what kind of new songs, and just encourage everybody out there. If you've got some creative bones in your body this Christmas, this Advent, and you want to write some stuff, this is a brilliant and beautiful time to write worship songs for your congregation, because they just, they hang on the vine for about 5 or 6 weeks, and they're just great to come back to. And it's a great place to start as a writer, and encourage you in that. And if you feel like you're in obscurity and maybe you don't have what it takes to write for the church or whatever, be encouraged by Anthony's story that God is using him in the pub and in the marketplace and in the church and in this beautiful way, and just be open to what God has for you. Susan, thanks for writing the Devo. Encourage everybody to listen to the song. Go to YouVersion, check out the devotional for Royal Son. The song will be streaming mid-November on all the streams, and all the chord charts and everything are at vineyardsongs.com and also on Song Select, etc., etc. And it's just a really beautiful song, Anthony, and I'm so honored that we got to work together. Anthony, how can peoples find out more about you? You got like a website for your Slice of Life songs, your Grey's Anatomy songs? Where do we find that?
You can check out my MySpace. That's the only social media I use. No, I don't know. I'm on. You can listen to my stuff on Spotify and YouTube and Apple Music, all that stuff. Yeah, I'm out there.
So it's Anthony Peebles with a B. Peebles.
Yeah, Peeblas. That's it.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
And Susan, you're also a spiritual director, so people can find you on the socials if they follow me. What's your website? What is it?
It's Rivers of Eden SD.
riversofedensd.com. So if you need a spiritual director, my wife is one of the best. My goodness. Thank you, Anthony, Susan, for being part of this convo. It's been a gift to dive into some of these themes and to explore Royal Son. So check it out. Thank you, everybody in the Ferment community, for listening. Merry Christmas, Happy Advent, and we'll talk to you soon.
Hey everyone, Casey Corum here, producer of the podcast. Thanks for listening. As always, if you've been enjoying the podcast, here's a few ways you can help us. First of all, leave us a review on the podcast platform of your choice. This helps more people find us. Also, connect with us on social media. Instagram at The Ferment Podcast and Twitter at FermentCast. All right, everyone, thanks for listening. See you next week. Peace.